Hello, so I've had a couple of questions about the assignment breakdown for Unit 20, so I thought I'd record it verbally and then explain each part, just in case you are having problems with it. So obviously it's a report and you do have to refer to the case study throughout, but that makes it easier because it means that you've got something to hang your discussion on. So, Michael, what are the factors that cause his mental health problems? What diagnosis would he be given? Why is that diagnosis uncertain? Things like that really link quite well with the spec. If you're following this, you are covering all the criteria because I've included everything in it, the distinction, merit criteria, etc. I've broken it down into titles. A report should have titles. So intro. This report is a report on the current status of mental health in the UK in the light of the COVID pandemic or after the COVID pandemic. I know we've changed the case study on the front, but you can still include COVID because a lot of people are still suffering from the impacts of COVID, the loss of work, the loss of family members. It is a factor that will impact upon mental health. Obviously, you can refer to the case study throughout this. We will be discussing a case study. What is mental health and well-being? So I've linked it to the PowerPoint week 1. Also, remember the nature of mental health. So what is mental health? Okay, is it a biological problem? Is it about the way you live your life? What is the difference between mental health and mental illness? What is the difference between mental health and mental well-being? All of those sorts of questions can come into play. What you want to do when you're doing this assignment, you want to be critical about things. You don't just want to describe things. You want to say, but on the other hand, it might be this. But on the other hand, some people think it's this. There's loads and loads of stuff you can talk about. So obviously a definition of mental health, definition of well-being. You've got the WHO definition from the PowerPoint. They tend to equate or think mental health and well-being are the same thing. Others believe that they are not. They do affect each other though. Then we've got the idea of mental capital and the dual axis model. Mental capital, if you can develop a set of skills that can help your mental health and well-being, which is what mental capital is, then, what is mental health? I mean, it isn't a biological problem, is it? If you can develop your cognitive skills and develop your emotional resilience and therefore get better. And that also can impact on how we treat mental health problems. If we teach people skills to be able to deal with it and things like that. The dual axis model is very much saying mental health and well-being are different things. You can be mentally unwell, as in you might have depression, but you can also have a good sense of well-being. You can recover from mental health problems and things like that. So that's what do these theories show us. They show us that there's some complexity and difficulty in understanding what mental health is because there's so many theories of it and so many things that impact upon it as well. And this evaluate the nature of mental health and well-being. That should be throughout your work, really. It's not about writing one paragraph on this issue. It's about making it a thread that runs right through your work, and that's what the best answers will do. What are the factors that influence well-being? Right, so that's PowerPoint week 2. The factors that influence are the things that happen in the world or in your brain that cause mental health problems. The highlighted sections in this assignment breakdown are basically giving you a definition of the beta keywords. So analyze, identify. Basically what analyze means is identify separate factors, say how they are related and how each one contributes to the topic. So for each of these things, right, what you want to be doing is you want to be providing evidence and explanation that they cause or can contribute to mental health problems. Give evidence and say how they're linked. Okay, one of the good ways that you can say how they're linked is through poverty, because a lot of these factors are caused by poverty. A lot of those factors as well, the non-biological factors, can contribute to your biology and change your brain and the structure of your brain. Then discuss psychological theories of well-being. the psychoanalytical, the biomedical, the behaviorist. That's PowerPoint week 5, and that is relevant to 2 areas. So it's relevant to factors. Why do we get mental health problems? But also relevant to the nature of mental health and well-being. Like, for a biomedical theorist, the nature of mental health is that it's a brain abnormality, a disease. Whereas for a psychoanalytical thinker, such as Freud, it's caused by upbringing and a disconnection and an imbalance in your psyche. Whereas for a behaviorist, you learn mental illness. Okay, so there's lots of things you can talk about in relation to those. Then you've got the classification systems. What are the strengths and weaknesses? What are the disorders? Right? So the DSM, ICD, DSM used in the US, ICD used in the rest of the world. ICD is the WHO, the DSM is the APA. What disorders are there? Well, there are various types of disorders, mood disorders, for example. Okay, give examples of mood disorders. What are their symptoms? Discuss the strengths and limitations of current classification systems. What are the strengths and weaknesses of those things? Explain them. On balance, are those classification systems a good thing or not? On the one hand, it allows us to recognize and then treat appropriately mental health conditions. On the other hand, are we over-labeling? Are we giving too much power to the companies who make pills to push us in diagnosing people in a certain way? When it says here, discuss and explain, you need to discuss, obviously, explain the different strengths and weaknesses, and then you need to discuss them, as in, you've got strengths, you've got weaknesses. On balance, do the strengths outweigh the weaknesses, or the weaknesses outweigh the strengths? All of this is just a different BTEC criteria. So obviously you need to cover all of these, but if you're explaining and analysing the contribution of the current classification systems, what you're doing is you're explaining the strengths and weaknesses, and then you're unpicking it a little bit, saying how they're connected, how they influence each other. On balance, are they a good thing or not? Why? Give examples. Where it's saying here, evaluate the role of the current classification systems in providing the diagnosis of selected, the diagnosis of selected mental health conditions and their symptoms. What you want to do is use 2 examples, depression and personality disorder. They're the ones that are most relevant to the case study, and to be honest, the easiest to talk about as well, because there's a lot you can say. So evaluate just means review the information and then bring it together to form a conclusion. Okay, so again, if you're evaluating the role of the current classification systems, what you're doing is you're providing lots of evidence, okay, and saying what that evidence shows us about the classification systems, and then bring it together to form a conclusion. In other words, in general, are those classification systems a good thing for diagnosing depression and personality disorders? And that question, you can answer it in various ways. You can say they're a really good thing because they allow us to correctly diagnose people and therefore give them appropriate treatment. On the other hand, you could say they're actually a bad thing because they over-label, and it's also difficult to tell the difference between some of the disorders, and therefore you might be labeling someone with one disorder when in fact they have another. Some people think personality disorders don't exist and that we should abolish that category, because what we're doing is we're labeling people who are different. So in terms of depression, right, one of the problems with the classification systems is the DSM-5 abolished the grief exception. So, they might be medicalizing grief. Another thing is that in the DSM, they don't have categories of mild, moderate, and severe depression. So how do you treat mild depression? How do you know if you have it as opposed to severe depression? The ICD does have that. The DSM is better for giving a reliable diagnosis because it has really clear symptoms, but the ICD is less so, but it gives more power to the doctor to be able to make distinctions, which some people say is a good thing. Personality disorders, how do we tell the boundaries between them? A lot of them have really, really similar symptoms. Are we over-labeling people? I posted the video on Teams that said, personality disorder. I can't remember which personality disorder is. Dissociative personality disorder doesn't exist, and it would be better explained by schizophrenia or BPD. If that's the case, these people are not getting the correct treatment that's appropriate for them. Then you write a conclusion. You want to sum up what you've written. What does this report and the theories you've written about show us about mental health and well-being? It shows us that it's a big problem. Use statistics all the way through this assignment. We've got better in dealing with these things, but we're still not getting it completely right. Are there any changes you think we could use in order to make the system better? Hopefully that's clarified a few things. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can let me know.